Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
My friends, does truth matter? Does the truth matter? I think for those of us who live in reality, those of us who understand what happens when we accept lies, I think we would resoundingly agree that truth does matter. But when it comes to people on the radical left in the media, what matters is the narrative. What matters is what they get us to believe, whether it is true or not. And so it is through that lens that I want to talk today about Dr. Jill Biden. Yes, she's out there in the media promoting her book, sometimes embarrassingly so. Don't know if you saw her sitting there with Whoopi Goldberg. I'm not going to play that clip. But she was sitting with Whoopi Goldberg, and her husband, President Bribery, stood up and asked Jill who she loved the most. Kind of an embarrassing situation. Former president of the United States. But I'm not going to talk about that particular shenanigan and debacle. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to play a clip of an interview she had talking about the reasons that, Biden lost, some of the backgrounds as to what happened, and her analysis as to whether or not Joe would have beaten President Trump in the general election of 2024. So that's what I want to talk about, because truth matters. And when we have a group of people who are lying to us consistently, especially when it involves the people in the media who are supposed to be telling us information that is accurate, of course, that's laughable, I understand. But the idea of a media is to hold truth to power. Instead, what the media has become is a vehicle for which the left can exercise its control and power in politics over the American people. So that's what I want to talk about here today. And I appreciate you joining us. Before we get rocking and rolling, though, my friends, maybe you've reached that stage where managing your money feels like juggling more than just numbers. There's tax planning, estate work, investment choices, a whole lot more. That's when family office services can really make a difference. Full Suite Wealth brings all those pieces together into one cohesive strategy. Their family office services give you access to a coordinated team with advanced options, strategies, private equity, private credit, and legal expertise. All those things, my friend, under one roof. It's about simplifying your financial life, planning for the future, and making sure your legacy stays strong for generations. If you're ready for that next level of support, visit FullSuiteWealth.com today. That's FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy. Secure your future. So Tuesday, Dr. Jill, former First Lady of the United States, was on MS Now's Morning Joe. Morning Joe. I'm reading here headline or article at Breitbart.com. Headline: Joe would have beaten Trump in 2024 if he had stayed in the race. So I'm just going to play this. I'm going to play a chunk of this. We're going to talk about this, and it matters because truth matters. It doesn't matter because we're relitigating or going through the details of the Biden presidency. That matters in the sense of learning from our mistakes, which electing President Bribery as president of the United States was a massive, tremendous mistake for this nation. Of course, as I've said before, in hindsight, I think the left wishes that Donald Trump would have been president from 2020 to 2024. So he would be done. His term would be over with. Instead, what they ended up giving him, and I said this at the time, they may come to regret what happened in these election cycles. They gave Trump a halftime, an intermission, a 4-year intermission to really rethink some things as far as strategy, as far as the people on the team, as far as just what really needs to be done, the level and depth of the depravity and the swamp in Washington, D.C. But nonetheless, Biden won in 2020. That's what we're told anyway. He was sworn in as president. And that's how those, as my mom used to tell me, that's how the cookie crumbled back in 2020. But now, after the defeat of the Democrats in 2024, and in a way, there were two defeats. First, the defeat of Joe Biden after the first debate. Second, the defeat of his replacement, Kamala Harris, in the general election. Both falling, if you will, to President Donald Trump. In fact, if I was Trump, as I'm saying these words, and I'm surprised he didn't say this, but Trump could say, I'm the first man in American history to win the presidency by defeating both Democrat candidates in one cycle, because that's effectively what he did, mopping the floor with Joe Biden during that first debate and defeating Kamala in the general election of 2024. But truth matters, and we need to learn from the truth. Listen, the only reason I'm talking about, I want to make this abundantly clear. So listen up if you're a leftist. You can comment. You can comment if this is a clip on our social media channel. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't. I don't know. But you can comment. I welcome the engagement that helps us reach more people. But I'm not the one bringing this up. Dr. Jill has written a book, has written a memoir. View from the East Wing is the title of the book. She's wearing a white top and on the front of the cover with her arms crossed. View from the East Wing. She's out here promoting her book. I didn't tell her to write it. I didn't tell her to promote it. It's a free country. She can do what she wants. I'm talking about this because she's out there. Let's make that plain and simple. I didn't make the rules. I didn't create the scenario. They did. And so this is fair game. This isn't about heaping injury upon them. This is about making sure the record is straight, making sure that we are aware of, completely aware of the techniques and the strategies employed by the 7 pillars of propaganda, by the professional politicians, by the professional deceivers, both in the media and in the Democrat Party, making sure that we understand how they operate, what they tell us, and why they tell us those things. This is revisionist history, and I want to talk about it, and I think it matters tremendously. So, with no further ado, let us now play parts of this interview between Dr. Jill Biden and the folks. Co-host Willie Geist is there starting this interview. And let's talk about it. I'm going to interrupt this as I do, and I'm going to share comments and thoughts along the way. So here you go, Dr. Jill on MS Now's Morning Joe, speaking with Willie Geist here at first. So let's get started and let's talk about this.
There were a lot of Democrats even who watched that debate performance and thought in some ways they'd been duped, that close advisors to President Biden, perhaps some members of the media, even had protected him enough and kept him out of maybe a rigorous event schedule enough that they could get him along through to Election Day. And they thought, oh, we just saw what it's really like behind the scenes. Is there any truth to that?
Really?
I'm pausing that there. Notice how he sets this up. There's a lot of Democrats that are now asking, a lot of people out there asking, is this the first time? Because that's what the story was, right? Dr. Jill says this was the first time she'd ever seen anything remotely close to Joe Biden acting the way he did in front of the camera during the debate back in, what was it, June, I think, of 2024. So about 2 years ago. That's the claim. Now, I'm not married to the man. I didn't serve in the administration. I only observe through the channels that we, the American people, have to observe the President of the United States. And I can tell you that I saw signs of this all over the place. You go back to this show. Look, that's one of the beautiful things about having this podcast is that there is a digital record of everything that I say, every opinion, every forecast, every hunch, every thought that I share on this show. It's in the record. You can go back to our archives of this program, wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can scroll back to any show, going all the way back to the beginning when we launched this program on August 10th, 2015. That's almost 11 years. So there's thousands of episodes, right? Approaching, what is that? There's 260, roughly, we'll say 260 episodes a year times 10, that's 2,600. And then there's another, we've probably, we're a couple months away. So let's say another 200. So there's 2,800 roughly episodes of this program. I didn't delete any of them or take them down. Of course, there's times I was gone, vacation or being sick or some such thing. But there's a lot of episodes. And in a lot of those episodes, especially episodes around you go back to 2019, 2020, and you will hear me saying things about Joe Biden's cognitive abilities. I've shared with you on this program, I'm not going to rehash it, but the power brokers, the decision makers in the Democrat Party, which, make no mistake, are the people behind the curtain. They want you to believe that they're a party of, by, and for the people, but they are a party of the elite ruling class. They were making the decisions and pulling the strings back in 2020 when Joe Biden it was decided that Biden was the nominee. It wasn't going to be Bernie Sanders. I've shared this before. They called up Pete Buttigieg. They called up Pocahontas, which I can say that nickname because it has been documented by a couple of genealogists that I am the 13th great-grandson. I kid you not, if this is the first time you're hearing this, of Pocahontas. I think it's cool. Now, there are conflicting reports. Some people say that that's an inaccurate report, but I'm still holding on to the fact that at least a couple of genealogists have traced back our history, and that's what we found. And so I'm the self-proclaimed spokesperson of the Pocahontas family, either direct descendant or just self-appointed. I don't know, but I'm here to tell you that we don't care. We don't care that Trump uses the term Pocahontas to describe Elizabeth Warren. It's much more offensive that Elizabeth Warren tries to politically benefit, professionally benefit, by claiming she is Native American because she's got high cheekbones and she's 1/64th something. It's crazy nonsense. But anyway, those are the people who were in the Democratic primary, presidential Democratic primary back in 2020, and they were called by the Democrat Party power brokers and told to step aside. Step aside and let this guy, Joe Biden, win so we don't have a contested primary. I don't want to go through all that again. What I do want to say is that they knew back then. They knew back then. Hear me say this. They knew that Joe Biden's cognitive abilities were at best questionable and at worst on a trajectory for what we see today. And that was the understanding. They knew it. They didn't care. They pushed him, the candidacy of Joe Biden, President bribery, on the Democrat Party first, then on the American people, knowing full well this was the direction that we were going years ago, 6+ years ago, my friends. Dr. by the way, Joe Biden, and I know it's a doctorate in education. It's not a doctorate in medicine or something along those lines, even though Whoopi Goldberg years ago thought that this qualified her to be the, what did she think she should be qualified for? Maybe the, some scientific role in our government. I can't remember which one that it was, but nonetheless, Dr. Jill Biden tells us she'd never seen any signs of what was going on with Joe Biden. Other than that debate, nothing before, nothing since. That's all that she had seen. She was worried. She thought that he was having a stroke. All of these sorts of comments is what she said previously. And Willie Geist is asking, what do you say to people who say that this was covered up? Now, I don't want to implicate Willie Geist directly because I don't know, but Willie Geist needs to look around that room over at MSNBC, NBC, potentially, hear me say this, I'm not throwing him under the bus because I don't know specifically, but potentially in the mirror. Because I'm telling you, if some talk radio show host and podcaster here in the middle of flyover country, never met Joe Biden personally, could see clearly on my television, on clips of the internet, things that I saw him say in speeches outside of. If I never saw the debate between Trump and Biden, my conclusion would have been exactly the same. That debate did not do anything for me other than give me, I don't want to, personally, I take no satisfaction in what Joe Biden has to. It's sad. It is truly sad that this is his condition. I disagree with him tremendously politically. I think I call him President Bribery for a reason. I think that there's plenty of evidence to suggest that he was involved in some very nefarious stuff, some personal enrichment. That's my opinion based upon the evidence I've seen. So I did not want him to be the president for a whole host of reasons. But I did not take any satisfaction in the fact that he was declining, deteriorating. I was satisfied and pleased that the American people could finally see what was obvious to those of us who were paying attention. The media knew. I believe, I don't know how you could follow politics and cover politics and not conclude that something was wrong with Joe Biden. The only difference after that debate is that the mask came off. If you remember, some people came to his immediate defense. In fact, including Dr. Jill, who immediately that night went to the stage and told her husband, "Oh, you answered all the questions. Good job, Joey." Right? I'm a little bit of dramatics there, but not too much. That's what she did. That's how she treated him. There's no way that this is true. And Willie Geist is part, and the people there at MSNBC, CNN, NBC, CBS, CNN, they're all part of the problem because this was obvious to anyone who paid any attention. She responds, however.
If we were hiding him behind the scenes, why did we ask the Trump team for the debate? I mean, we were the ones that proposed it. Like, if that were true, why did we put him out there?
So
I'll tell you why. That's her response. If we were hiding him, why would we have put him out there? We were the ones, she says, Dr. Jill here, we were the ones who said to Trump, hey, let's do a debate in June. If you remember, this is earlier than normal. I'll tell you why. There was an answer for this back then. An answer for this back then that was being said by not just me, but other Republicans. They wanted to get Joe out there as quickly as possible to see if he was up to the task, because they knew if they waited until, say, August, it was a much... Look at what Kamala's campaign is, what Kamala is saying and what her campaign has said. They said, you know what, we had the shortest runway in a presidential campaign ever, and we almost won the election, right? That's their argument. If we only would have had a little time, if Biden would have stepped aside sooner, all those sorts of things, then we wouldn't have lost in 2024. That's the argument. That's what they are saying. And the reason that this debate was sooner was because strategically, again, the decision makers in the Democrat Party decided we got to get this guy out there as soon as we can so that we can prove to the party decision makers that he is equipped to campaign and defeat Trump again here in 2024. That's why. That's exactly why. This was all part of the plan. This was all part of the strategy. The bigger question is that here's the question that she's not asked. At least I haven't heard it asked. Why, Dr. Jill, after witnessing the debacle that we saw, if that was the only time you've ever seen the slightest bit of, where his cognitive abilities have slipped or were absolutely short of what a president's cognitive abilities should be. If that's the only time you saw that, which again, I think is complete and utter bunk. But if she thinks that, why did she let him stay in office? You know, they talk about the 25th Amendment, exercising the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office. I remember talking about this in 2020. Who's running the country? We officially knew after the debate in June of 2024, Biden stayed in office until January of 2025. So that's July, the month of June, the month of July, August, September, October, November, December, and half of January. So you're looking at 7.5 months of not having a president of the United States. Now you might remember Ramaswamy came out and said Republicans and conservatives need to quit calling for Biden to be removed by the 25th Amendment because that would put Kamala Harris in the role of president. That would then make her the official incumbent. And statistically, that's harder. It's harder to remove her. I said that's all well and good. Why is everybody more focused on winning elections than the absolute abject danger that we find ourselves in today by refusing to admit that we didn't have an elected person who was running the executive branch, at least for the final 6-8 months of Biden's term, and probably much longer than that. I got more to play from this, my friends, but I have to take a timeout. There's a lot of confusion out there about kratom. You've probably heard the headlines, and most of those are based on synthetic junk that isn't real kratom at all. Real kratom is natural. It's tested. It's handled with care. That's exactly what you get from Christopher's Organic Botanicals. They are a family-run company. They partner directly with farmers in Indonesia. They lab test every batch. There's no chemicals, there's no fillers, there's no shortcuts. This is a trusted herbal option that's been used for generations, and it is a real alternative for people looking for something that does not come with a warning label a mile long. So, do your research. If you decide this is a good fit for you, start with their Kratom Starter Pack. Coupon code Todd Huff, get you 10% off your first order. Christopher's Organic Botanicals.com. That's Christopher's Organic Botanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency, and yes, time out for me, my friends. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Going through this interview, parts of this interview between Dr. Jill and the folks over at MS Now Morning Joe. This was, I believe, yesterday, Tuesday. So let's get back to this. Again, the game here that we're playing is to pretend that nothing was wrong with Joe Biden except the time it just worked out this way, that the only time there was any evidence whatsoever that Joe Biden was unfit to be commander-in-chief and should not be running for president, let alone holding the office, was during his one and only debate. You talk about just an absolutely unbelievable set of circumstances. What's a debate? 90 minutes? Is that what these things are? So the guy is the 90 minutes, the only 90 minutes of his life that he is basically lost or having any signs of confusion, cognitive decline ever occurred during his one and only debate with former president at the time, Donald J. Trump. There's no way. There's no way that this is true. But this interview continues between Dr. Jill and Willie Geist on Morning Joe.
You don't think that he was protected in any way?
No, I don't think he was protected.
There's another sort of conventional wisdom has formed now in many Democratic circles that President Biden beats Donald Trump in 2020, a moment for history, according to Democrats, for sure, to stop the Trump administration. They've overperformed in the midterms in 2022, and perhaps that would have been a good moment for President Biden to say, I've done the job. I'm going to be a one-term president at this stage in my life. Were there ever any conversations to that effect?
Well, of course. I mean, Joe had to decide whether to run again. But like you said, you know, we did well. The Democrats did well in the midterms. And in 2023, the Democratic Party was totally behind Joe. And people everywhere I went, Joe's got to do it again. He's got to run. He's got to run. And he was like, well, I don't know. You know, am I too old? I mean, it was the age question, no matter where we went. And so, of course, you know, we heard that what people were saying, but then people were doing polling, you know, who could beat Trump. And the only person who polled that said they could beat Trump was Joe Biden. And so that's why Joe decided to continue on.
So that's why Joe decided to continue on, she said. Couple of things here. Number one, I love how they talk about this as though this is some, something in years and years in the past, as though this is just, you know, we're far removed from this. This is an active operation to cover up the truth, and it will remain this, my friends, for a long time, as long as possible. I shared with you what really happened back in 2024 when they decided. She says, Dr. Jill says, that Joe Biden was deciding if he was going to run. She also mentioned because of his age, which is meant to cause doubt about the current guy, because Trump is close to the age of Joe Biden. In fact, if I sometimes, when I look at comments to my program's clip, which, by the way, you can get at YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We still do TikTok. That's been an interesting place for us to be. They've changed something because we used to get a ton of good response. Now I'm in, I think, leftist jail over there where I'm, which is fine. I don't care. I'm just telling you that we will see what we continue to do there at TikTok. But regardless, you can get clips of this show, and you can see some of these things I'm talking about when you'll see some of the comments. You'll see comments sometimes that say, you know, this guy that we currently have in office has shown cognitive decline. That's the argument. Look, you can say certain things about Trump. You can question his height and his weight. You can question the way that he handles the media, the way that he brags on himself. I get it. This is not something that every American understands, appreciates, likes. I get it. That's not what this is about. But to say he's anywhere near Joe Biden is absolutely insane. Donald Trump will take a impromptu press conference for as much time as he wants and can stand up there and throw out information and have conversation for as long as he desires. He is one of a kind in that respect. He is not anywhere. The people who say this are simply either did not pay attention because the media did. Listen. I understand that some people, they don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe that they were duped into voting for Joe Biden. I understand. It's a hard sell to say, hey, you fell for the lie. You're the one that helped. You're one of the people who helped this guy win in 2020, and he wasn't fit for office. I understand that that's a tough pill to swallow, especially in this divisive world, especially when some conservatives would ruthlessly mock these folks and everything else. I don't take that tact. I try to stick to truth. Yeah, we have a little bit of fun with it. I think people need to grow up and have a sense of humor sometimes about life. Some people take themselves way too seriously, but at the same time, I understand the stakes are high. I say that on this program. We're in the midst of a cold civil war, and there has to be a winner. We as Republicans have to win these battles so convincingly that we can advance our political agenda. And if the left wants to win, I hope that doesn't happen, but they have to do the same thing. One side's going to have to win enough power, political power, to effectively make the changes that they want to make. That's the way out of this, and it's going to be a brutal fight. And nobody wants to admit that they were wrong. I get it, but this is a bunch of nonsense. This is pure, ridiculous sophistry. This is not genuine discourse. This is about covering up the record. This is about rewriting history. This is about changing, protecting, I should say, the legacy of Joe Biden. If you remember, again, the party bosses made this call. They said, Joe, get out. It wasn't Joe's decision. Joe had to cooperate, or this would have gotten real ugly. I tell you what I think happened behind the scenes. They said, Joe, listen, if you drop out of this race, we'll make sure that we protect your legacy, and we're not going to go after Hunter. We're going to protect Hunter. If you don't, it's going to be ugly for you. You're going to be exposed for being the only president in history that, well, one of the most embarrassing, let's put it that way, presidents in history. One that was lost his abilities to run the country. And we're not going to defend Hunter at some point as well. I think that was the choice that was provided to him. He decided to step down, and of course, we all know what happens from that particular point. But this is, this idea that that Biden was going to beat Trump. Now they can say whatever they want because he's not running again. He didn't run against him. He didn't finish the race last time. So you can make any claim that you want. And that's where we find ourselves here with what Dr. Jill is saying. I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and then we're going to take a break here. So here's Dr. Jill continuing.
Or does the president now regret dropping out of the race?
I would never want anyone I loved to go through that again. It was so painful, not just for us, not just for me and for Joe, but we have children and grandchildren, and to see them have to go through that was really a hard time for our family, and I would never want to put our family through that again.
But does he believe to this?
So that's what she says. Does he regret dropping out? She said it was really hard. I wouldn't want to put anyone through that. It is hard. It's hard when you are fully healthy and capable and have all of your cognitive abilities. And it's even harder when you don't and there's pressure. Remember, he was being protected. These folks are used to being protected by the media. There was some point where it was impossible for that to happen. So, more on this after the break, my friend. Let's talk about something important here. Your money. You worked hard for it, but is it working hard for you and what you believe in? At 48 Financial, they specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith and values, and they'll help create a plan that fits your goals and your purpose. The best part is that they will show you how your current investments stack up against your values. Visit 48financial.com/Todd to complete a quick and easy assessment to find out to what degree your investments are aligned with your values. Again, 48financial.com/Todd. 48 Financial, helping you align your money with your mission. Time out here for me, my friends in the studio. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of today's program. I appreciate you hanging in there with us today as we're going through this, you could say the autopsy of the 2024 campaign, not the general election, but the primary process when President Joe Bribery was unable to debate, completely incapable of debating, communicating, sharing a coherent thought on that debate stage nearly 2 years ago. Now, Dr. Jill's out there promoting her book. The family is certainly it's been reported under some financial pressures, having lots of debts, and of course the questions of what happens now that Hunter has lost these alleged pay-to-play scandals. He can no longer sell his childhood art. It wasn't childhood art, but it wasn't much better than childhood art. We were told he was some sort of an artistic genius and was able to sell his paintings for lots and lots of money, outperforming the likes, while they were living anyway, of Picasso and other artistic wonders on planet Earth. Hunter Biden, when his father was president, seemed to have all sorts of luck, including selling art for incredibly high prices. All that stuff has come to a halt, and now Dr. Jill's out there trying to sell her book. So I want to play as much of this as I can in the time that I have remaining here. This is at Breitbart.com. If you want to listen to this, Breitbart.com. Again, it's Dr. Jill Biden. You should be able to find it. It posted yesterday by Pam Key. June 2nd is the posting day. But here we go, back to the interview here between Willie Geist and Dr.
Day
Jill
that
Biden.
he would have defeated Donald Trump in that election.
I believe he would have beat Donald Trump in that election.
Easy to
So,
say.
Dr. Biden, when your husband was elected president, he was the oldest man to do so. But then,
He was.
But then Donald Trump.
I was the oldest first lady. My birthday's tomorrow. I hate to admit
Really
it.
happy early birthday.
Well, thank you.
But then Donald Trump became the oldest man elected president when he, in 2024.
Yeah, so-
he turns 80 in 2 weeks' time. Your husband, as we've been discussing, received a lot of scrutiny for his age. There were questions about whether he was up for the job. Those questions are starting to mount with President Trump. What do you see? Do you think he deserves that same sort of
I
scrutiny?
never watched Trump. I'm sorry.
Oh, boy.
Well, do you think he deserves the same sort of scrutiny that your husband did?
I'm not going to comment anything about Donald Trump.
Let's talk about.
So pause there. You can't see the video. Her lips are pursed. There's obviously a great deal of disdain and hate. It certainly looks like it for President Trump. And I understand. I mean, politics is not for the faint of heart. I mean, it is brutal, and President Trump is ruthless. I get it, but she's not. It certainly doesn't look like at all here, based upon her response, her body language, and all that. She's not interested in even talking about this, but the media is wanting her to. And I don't know. I don't have the name here of this other guy asking the questions here. Doesn't matter. They're all the same. They all are pushing the left's agenda. He served it up for her. He wanted her to say, hey, they want to make this all about age. They want to make this about age. Well, your husband, it's been argued, wasn't fit to serve in office because of his age. Wink, wink. Is there a way to, should we be concerned about these same things regarding President Trump? And she said, I did. She's her hatred is. I don't want to overstate it or I don't want to guess completely, but you can tell that there's obviously things there that she has a strong feeling against President Trump, and I do understand that. I do. Trump was brutal to deal with, but she missed the opportunity that they were hoping she would take advantage of, which is, this is something that we should be concerned with. Now, here's what's interesting to me. You've got a situation where certainly as you age, as we all age, there is the possibility of cognitive decline. That can happen to anybody for a multitude of reasons. But just because you age does not mean that you reach full cognitive decline. In fact, if you scour the internet, you'll find examples of some very relatively vibrant people who are in their 90s. I just saw one lady yesterday on a news report or something she was in her 90s and she could basically do hang from a pull-up bar for like 2 minutes, almost 3 minutes, which is remarkable. So there's no doubt that our bodies age. They are more prone to sickness and disease. There's cognitive decline, but it doesn't have to happen to everybody, or as extremely as it did to President Biden here. But they want to say that this is all about age, and we should be concerned. I guess we should be concerned for any president to make sure that he or she stays healthy and fully alert and is able to exercise, complete judgment and all that. But there was something more than simple aging that was affecting Joe Biden. Everybody knows it. Those of us who were paying attention knew it back then. They, the media, they, the administration, they, the family, they, the Democrat Party, were hiding this from us. And now they're engaging in one big game, acting like they're shocked as to what they found. But folks, I've got to go. Have a great day. We'll talk tomorrow. SDG.